The king and the servant. A servant had served his master for some 30 years, and was known and admired for his loyalty, truthfulness, and devotion to God. His honesty, however, had made him many enemies in the court, who spread stories of his duplicity and perfidy. They worked on the king day and day out until he too came to distrust the innocent servant, and finally ordered the man who had served him so well to be put to death. In this kingdom, those condemned to death were tied up and thrown into the pen, where the king kept his fiercest hunting dogs. The dogs would promptly tear the victim to pieces. Before being thrown to the dogs, however, the servant asked for one last request. "I would like 10 days' respite," he said, "so that I can pay my debts, collect any money due to me, return items that people have put in my care, and share out my goods among the members of my family and children, and appoint a guardian for them." After receiving a guarantee that the servant would not try to escape, the king granted this request. The servant hurried home, collected 100 gold pieces, then paid a visit to the huntsman who looked after the king's dogs. He offered this man the 100 gold pieces and said, "Let me look after the dogs for 10 days. The huntsman agreed, and for the next 10 days the servant cared for the beasts with great attention, grooming them well and feeding them handsomely. By the end of the 10 days they were eating out of his hand. On the 11th day the servant was called before the king. The charges were repeated, and the king watched as the servant was tied up and thrown to the dogs. When the beasts saw him, they ran up to him with wagging tails. They nibbled affectionately at his shoulders and began playing with him. The king and other witnesses were amazed, and the king asked the servant why the dog had spared his life. The servant replied, "I have looked after these dogs for 10 days. The king has seen the results for himself. I have looked after you for 30 years, and what is the result? I am condemned to death on the strength of accusations brought by my enemies." The king blushed with shame. He not only pardoned the servant, but gave him a fine set of clothes, and handed over to him the people who had slandered his reputation. The noble servant set them free and continued to treat them with kindness. Moral: win through actions, never through argument.